Hello, everybody. Welcome to another poem and another lesson. And we're going to be today looking at Bayonet Charge. This is the next poem that we have within the Power and Conflict cluster, and this is by Ted Hughes. So this was published in 1957. So this is some years after the First World War. However, it's in relation to that, so giving us the context of the First World War, in which he didn't actually serve himself, but this is perhaps a lot of the experiences and the information perhaps he's getting is from his father, and of course he's able to just pass on some of the stories really to him. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the poem Bayonet Charge. Now, if you remember the other poem we looked at earlier, which is the Charge of the Light Brigades, is very similar to that. So just to help you perhaps remember the difference between them, that is a collective group effort, perhaps where there's a bit of a charge taking um, place. And of course, in this poem, we have just really a single account, so of one individual really just charging forward. And of course, it gives us quite a few feelings that are very similar, to be honest. Okay, we're going to have a look at this poem as we have with the others. So we've got the quotes 3 there in red and 2 in green. Perhaps you may want to consider as well. Okay, so firstly, we want to understand what the poem is about. So it's the account of one single soldier and their experience as they charge forward towards enemy lines as well. And we get some details in terms of some of their feelings and thoughts as well. And we'll find that the feelings are not mostly of patriotism in terms of feeling pride that they're going to die for their country or they're going to defend their country. Their feelings are mostly of fear. Fear and, of course, trying to stay alive. So these are a lot of the feelings ultimately they have. And there's lots of references as well in terms of perhaps how they are really just thinking about that and things such as patriotism. To be honest, they couldn't really care less about that. So these are some of the things you'd want to just really talk about. And perhaps, again, Ted Hughes is trying to put forward particular messages in terms of this is ultimately the reality of conflict and the effects of conflict in terms of prior to arriving in a war zone, there could be feelings of patriotism. However, once perhaps soldiers are in the thick of it, then they are not really thinking about patriotism and their country. It is just too traumatic for them to be thinking about that, and they are just looking to follow their natural instincts, which is to survive. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the things we can pick up. So, first quote, we'll start off with suddenly he awoke. So, this is interesting. So, suddenly there perhaps already just sets the tone, quite sort of a rushed tone here. So, seems to be very quick actions taking place. And again, perhaps then gives the idea that the soldier's going to be perhaps a little bit confused. They are perhaps not going to be um, also not very organized as well. So even though they may have conducted particular training and so on, it really gives the idea that he's not really in a real sort of calm state of mind to be able to perhaps even follow orders as well. So with the suddenly he awoke also just really gives the idea that it's you know, he's perhaps not very well rested and therefore um, he may just make some wild decisions and also perhaps just do something which just really comes natural to him, which is to try and escape and get out of there rather than try to just fight the enemy. So also perhaps also giving the impression that they are in some sort of nightmare as well. Um, However, of course, this gives us the idea that they are awake. And this is something that's quite interesting. So the next quote we have, which is pointed out to be a key one. So again, with some of the key quotes I would put forward, they are open to interpretation. I feel that some of these quotes, they may not be the most rich, but they certainly are relatively memorable. So bullet smacking the belly out of the air. I think this is quite a gory um, bit of language being used here, and I think perhaps for a lot of people, they could find this quite easy to remember. So bullets smacking the belly out of the air, very sort of violent language here as well. Onomatopoeia also being used here as well, and trying to just recreate the effect or the impact perhaps of bullets going through perhaps somebody. Those are some of the points there that we can have. So again, sets the tone here quite early on in terms of this is what's happening, and it's not sort of a really rosy sort of image that may be presented on wall posters prior to people signing up to join. And finally, we have his terrors touchy dynamite. So we've got the alliteration there, something that's quite interesting, and it seems to be in a really difficult situation here, and of course, really thinking about his own actions as well. And he feels perhaps as well that he has become, with the killing and things that he's been asked to do, he has really just become a weapon as well with the dynamite there. And ultimately, he's just really acting out of fear. He is really shocked, he's confused, and ultimately, he's just perhaps trying to take the lives of others and fulfill his duty. However, it's not out of real joy or sense of patriotism, but trying to just survive. Okay, another quote. So we'll have a look at like a man who has jumped up in the dark and runs. So this is something that's quite interesting here. So really giving the idea with this simile here that he, well, this stanza seems to be mostly just him being confused, really not sure as to what's happening. But certainly he's trying to just suggest this is kind of how he is. So jumping up and in the dark as well. So he's just really hoping for the best. He doesn't really know what's around and what's happening. And this is ultimately the effect of the conflict as well. So once the fighting begins, then this is sort of the reaction that soldiers will have. And also as well, by extension, perhaps just trying to say as well that he is in the dark as well. In the dark as to what he's doing there. And again, by extension, what the other soldiers may be thinking the same too, in terms of what are they doing there, and they are ultimately just running, and almost you could say like headless chickens, to be honest, just running around and just trying to survive. It's just um, that they are in survival mode, and of course it could be another criticism of perhaps the war strategies that they have, which have clearly not been very effective. Okay, and the final quote, we've got king honor, humor, dignity, etc. Drop like luxuries. So that there is something that I really like as well. So dropped like luxuries. That's something that's quite interesting. Really, just giving the idea that all ideas or notions of patriotism is just something that is a luxury. So for those that perhaps are in this situation, then they are not really thinking about that at all. And of course, it's been made very clear here with that reference there. And the etc. That's something that's very interesting as well. It's just almost like saying, blah blah blah. These are some of the messages that they would come out with and say, fight for your king and have some honor and dignity and so on. I was just thinking perhaps it's almost like he's just repeating some of those pre-war messages and poster messages, perhaps that a lot of young soldiers would have been exposed to. But of course, now he's just sort of fed up of hearing about those messages, it seems, and just seems to be not really interested either in listing those or paying attention to those. He's just not interested, it seems, at all. Okay, so those are some points in relation to Bayonet Charge by Ted Hughes. I hope you found this useful. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and comment and share with others. Thank you. Take care and bye for now.